Hello, this is Kimberly Fawn from Clear Center, and I'm here with David Loper, and in today's screencast we're going to cover the ClearOS NAS marketplace apps, how to make good decisions on what directory apps are best for you, file sharing, options and services, and utilities to make your NAS more secure and robust. And David has talked to us before about NAS. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about what that is?
So for people that are already in IT, a lot of them will know what NAS means. NAS is network attached storage, and basically it's a concept that there's this device on your network that has a lot of storage space on it. And for us, we're using today the microserver Gen 10, which is a great little device that is capable of packing a lot of density when it comes to affordability in the NAS space. So we have a server today. It's packed with a bunch of hard drives, and so we're going to start picking out applications from the ClearOS marketplace that really make this kind of device sing and kind of live up to its full potential. So log into your ClearOS interface, and let's go to the marketplace, and let's take a look at the different NAS type applications that we can choose from. So one of the things that's really important when you're deciding what to do with your NAS is to decide what is the directory structure that I'm going to use for my ClearOS server. So for ClearOS, there is a authentication mechanism that lies underneath all of the server, and that is expressed in the various different directory choices that we can make. If you go to, I'm going to open this in a new tab here. I'm going to go and open up groups here. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm going to open up groups here, and you can see here that it's saying that I need to configure something. Now, one thing about ClearOS is it's going to, if it needs something, it's going to say something, right? It's not just going to say, oh, well, go ahead and set up some groups when you physically can't set up some groups or you haven't decided on how you're going to approach this. Now, with ClearOS Business, you have more options than you do on the community or home version. One of those options is to set up this master slave synchronization. So you would want to do this if you had more than one ClearOS box, for example, and you wanted to set it up so that you could have like a central place where you defined users and then everything else was subordinate. Now, even if you're going to do the Active Directory connector, you're going to be prompted for this because there are elements that ClearOS will use that are not stored in Active Directory that can be synchronized in the back end between boxes. So I usually recommend for people that have the option to change the mode here to master in order to be able to have the potential of setting that up. So this would be only on the business users. For everybody else, you can just choose standalone mode and then hit set mode. And what this will do is this will actually download some things from the marketplace and install them, and it will set it up as either a master, a slave, or a standalone box. Now, in a master mode, you're going to get a synchronization key that you will use on a slave. If you chose slave, it's going to ask for the synchronization key, and it's also going to ask for the host name of the master. You will want to have a well-formed network infrastructure if you're going to set up something as the master. Okay, we're going to cover that as well in some other topics, especially when we talk about setting up ClearOS as a primary domain controller or a backup domain controller. So look for that video in the future. But for now, this is sufficient that it's the master. If we go back to groups again, it's going to tell us that we need to do something here, right? We have several different choices of things that we can do. Now, ClearOS has a built-in directory that you can use based on OpenLDAP. It's very powerful, very robust, has had a lot of testing in it. This is what we recommend if you are trying to do a kind of a standalone type environment, or you're trying to do a low-cost environment. This is what we recommend if you don't have Active Directory already on presence, or if ClearOS is going to kind of take over the role of directory server. If you do have Active Directory, you'll want to install and configure the Microsoft Active Directory connector. That will make it so that your ClearOS box will be subordinate to your Active Directory domain. That's really, really important, because now you've got shares that when people try to access them on, as the NAS, they will get pass-through authentication to your regular domain credentials. And so that really, really helps to lower the amount of administration that you need. Here we have a Samba beta. This is still in beta. If you run this, the reason why it's still in beta is that it's not very compatible with other apps in the marketplace yet. And so if you run the Samba directory, you'll want to kind of run it on a box that's kind of all by itself, or on a virtual machine that's all by itself. And then with your other ClearOS servers, you can use the Active Directory connector to connect to it. So today we're just going to install and configure the OpenLDAP. So I'm going to initialize that now. And here it's going to take a little while to set that directory up and to do some checks and to populate that directory. There's dozens and dozens of entries that have to happen there, and so it's just provisioning that directory with the entries now. Now, during this process, it will use the domain name that you specified previously when you set up the accounts master-slave synchronization. It will use that domain to populate that directory. You can change that after the fact. It's best if you consolidate and focus in on what that is supposed to be. The less change in the future is the better. So try to know what the domain is that you're going to be setting up. So for example, on this box, I set it up as clearos.lan, right? .lan, that's something I can use internally. It's not something that's used out on the internet. But I could have used clearos.com or some other domain. Maybe you have a domain like example.com that you would want to set up for your domain. Maybe it ties into something that you already own. This will happen in the background, so while it's doing that, we're going to go to the marketplace and select some applications that we can use. Oh, here you can see it's the part of the initialization process that it's going through is actually doing an install. So we get to see that in the that process. So that's one of the steps that it will do during the initialization process, is it'll actually download some apps. It looks like it's not quite done. We're going to hit update the navigation menus there and go back to the marketplace. Oh, still has some things to do. Let's go take a look at that app. Here we go under, I'll refresh this. Go to the account manager, make sure everything is good there. Back to the marketplace. Okay, it's done. So now we're going to go and choose this server category. So I chose that before. It's remembered that this is where a lot of the different NAS type applications are going to show up. Here's that directory server. We can say select it for install. Let's say install selected apps. This will give us the front end for it. We chose it as our back end system, but this is going to give us the kind of front end tools. Once this is done and I hit the update navigation menus, it will actually create that server category on this left-hand navigation pane. So right now it doesn't exist because we don't have any server apps. Look at the users and groups now. These are now accessible, and so we can, while it's busy setting up the front end for the directory server, we actually already have the back end, otherwise this wouldn't appear here. We can start to create a user here. So I'm going to do a real quick user creation here. I'll call this guy test user. And I'm going to create that account. I can also create a group. I'm going to call this accounting. Actually, I'm going to call this company. I'm going to put that everybody, this is everybody in the company. and I'm going to put test user. All right, let me go back to the marketplace. As you can see, that server category has appeared, and if we look under that, we can see that we have the directory server. And again, that's the open LDAP directory. And there, I lied. It's not set up yet with the name I want. I'm going to change it to ClearOS.LAN and update it. All right, it's busy changing all of those records. Again, I don't have to be here to watch it do it. Back in the marketplace, we are going to install some NAS apps. Okay, so one of the best apps to have for a NAS type solution is the FlexShare app. So I'm going to go to the server category here, and it's alphabetical, so here I see FlexShares. I'm also going to set up the Windows networking app because I want this to be able to do map network drives. So that's this one here, Windows Networking Samba. The Samba directory one shows up like this, and don't install that unless you're doing the prerequisite that I talked about, where you've got a server all by itself. For now, that's still in beta, so I'm going to leave that one alone and just do the Windows Networking Samba. I also want to have this server be an FTP server, and I want to share out files through web as well. So I'm going to install the web server. All right. So that is kind of the full FlexShare stack, right? So FlexShares, what that is that's the capability to share out storage space on your drive with different protocols. And so the protocols that I'm going to use for this server is I'm going to use FTP, I'm going to use web services, and I'm going to use Windows networking, for example, to share out my storage. So after you say select install, you get this little kind of invoice sheet. If you had apps that cost money here, you'd actually be able to resolve that. We're only going to install free apps today, so we won't be doing any of that. But it is a step to show us that it's all free. All right, again, that will all happen in the background, I think. So we can go and take a look at other things. All right, so this is finished setting up ClearOS.LAN. I can see this policies. Policies are if you want to use the LDAP directory for like LDAP-y type things, you can publish the policy to the network, and that way you can see like different user accounts and email addresses. Maybe you've got an address book thing that you want to do. You can see here I'm in the master mode, and here's all my different settings. If I wanted to do the whole LDAP bind, I could go in under CN equal manager, OU equal internal, DC equal ClearOS, DC equal LAN, and there's the password. Here's the different container groups in case you're interested in the organization of that system. I'm going to go back to the marketplace. And let's see, did it install it? Maybe I shouldn't have hit cancel. Let's see, what do we have here? Change it to server. Oh, yeah. It took my meaning to cancel the transaction, so I need to leave this alone. All right, so not all of the whenever you're installing an app in a category, you also want to check the cloud category, and we'll get to that in a bit. But sometimes there are applications that are delivered through the cloud that actually help in either server, network, or gateway. There are things that get delivered down from the cloud that kind of do cloud enablement. So this is part of the hybrid approach to IT. So there are specific cloud apps in the marketplace, like, for example, Dropbox. Dropbox, a lot of you know, is a cloud-based service for putting out your files out there. And there is a module for ClearOS that actually lets it so that you can synchronize what's going on in Dropbox also with your ClearOS server. That's really useful if you want to have some sort of on-site backup of what's going on in Dropbox. Maybe you've got a lot of teleworkers out there. They're using Dropbox, religiously. They have their laptops, plus they have their Dropbox account. But you also want to keep a copy locally of whatever is going on there, and you can set up Dropbox to do that. All right, we have updated the navigation system, and we've got these new subcategories here. Under directory, we still have just the directory server, but under file, we now have these the Flex shares and these two, FTP server and the Windows networking and the web server. Now I'm going to go set up the Windows networking because this one's really, really important. There's a lot of core things that happen that pivot a lot around the Windows networking. Effectively, what you're doing here is you're setting up ClearOS as a primary domain controller in the old NT4 style system. If this isn't what you wanted, if you wanted to join an existing domain, you should have chose the Active Directory connector instead. But this will make it so that you are a primary domain controller. If you had set this up as a slave, then setting this up would actually set it up as a backup domain controller to your existing ClearOS primary domain controller, provided that you could communicate with it. So here I'm going to set up the domain as ClearOS, and the server I'm going to call microserver G10. All right. Now, if you're familiar with Windows domains, you'll know there's an administrator account that's over the domain. In regular Microsoft Active Directory or Microsoft domains, that account is called administrator. But the account on local workstations is also called administrator. So to get rid of that confusion, what we've done is your workstation is still going to have the administrator account. What we do is we use WinAdmin as the Windows administrator account. So you want to set a password here for your WinAdmin. And I'm doing that here. And now I'm going to initialize my Samba directory. So this is making changes in the LDAP to do the tight integration that exists between the Samba and the Open LDAP. So this is one of those turnkey things that ClearOS does that takes a lot of heavy lifting off of your plate. If you were to use open source tools to do this, you have a lot of reading to do and a lot of troubleshooting to do. Here we've made it really simple. You just put in the domain and the password for the WinAdmin, and you're good to go. All right, Flex shares. We can't do that yet because we are still initializing Samba. All right, let's see if we can do web. Nope, we can't do that either. So all of this seems to be locked down except for FTP while it's installing. Now we are going to set up some FTP, because what we want to do is we want to be able to share this stuff out for Windows networking, but we also want to share it out through FTP. So you would use that in certain situations. And the nice thing about Flex shares is you can choose what you want to do. So let's say, for example, I have a business-to-business client that needs to be able to send me files. I need to send them files. We've got this sort of transaction that we've got to do. Now, I don't want them VPNing on my network, but I do want them to send their files secure. So I'm going to set up the FTP server. I'm going to require only open up ports so that they can FTP via secure means, and I'm going to have them come into my ClearOS server to dump their files through FTP. Now, in a lot of situations where you set up an FTP server, that share, your users on your network would also have to use an FTP client to get to it. But because this is Flex shares, you can set it up so your internal employees just have a map network drive. And for your business-to-business customer, they have to come in through Flex shares, through the FTP. So they come into the Flex share with the FTP. Your regular users, they come into the Flex share with their map network drive. What that means is that your regular users, to them, it's just transparent. They're going to drag and drop files in there, and your business-to-business client is going to just see them appear there. And as your business-to-business client comes and drops files in there, they're just going to show up under the Map Network drive for your users. So it's all tied in together. So here it's running already. I can see that I've got my regular FlexShare port is 21. That's typical, what's going to be expected. Now, one thing that will happen for your users is as you create users, they're going to get a home directory. There's separation between where home directories are and where FlexShares are. We put the by default users on port 2121 for their personal home directory FTP, right? So this would be a private FTP share that just that user could get to. But for that user, they're going to have a Map Network drive. A lot of companies will set it up like as the U drive or the G drive or some drive that's their kind of home folders where they can put their files and they have access to that. So here in the FTP module, we have support for that. All right, back to our Samba configuration. It is all done and set up. And here we can see just some regular controls for this. There's not much you have to do here because, again, this is handling the overall configuration of how this behaves. The Windows networking isn't the file share. It only handles the file share up to the home directories. Here we have them enabled, and so that same FTP port 2121 would be the same for the user. They could log in either way and see the exact same data. So if we want to create a share that like a group of people would do, we'd come and do that in FlexShares. Now, in order to do FlexShares, you have to do security certificates. This is a requirement because there's some security that's going on here that you need to do. And again, ClearOS will stop you and say, hey, you got to do this. So here I'm going to set this up as ClearOS, IT, anywhere in Utah, USA. Okay. I'm going to create these certificates, and when I do, my browser, I was using a different certificate. I was using a self-signed certificate. It was not an infrastructure type certificate, and so we need to refresh that, and I'm going to get a new error. It's going to prompt me here with a new certificate. All right. And there we go. Boom, we've got our certificates. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the FlexShares. This time it will not stop me. So here it's blank. We can add a FlexShare. Now, I'm not going to add a FlexShare just yet because there's a really important concept here, and this has to do with security, especially for compliance-based industries. ClearOS is based on a security model where it's what's called role-based security. Role-based security is really, really important because a lot of different compliance and compliance directives require that if you have a resource that you're sharing out, that resource needs to be, if it's not a resource that's specific to a single user, meaning it's shared between a number of users, that resource needs to be defined in a resource group. And so to do that, we need to have a group that is going to be assigned to the FlexShares. Now, if you go and you make FlexShares right off the bat, you're going to see it's got an all users group there, and you can assign out permissions so that all users can access that. That's actually there for compatibility reasons, and we don't recommend that you use the all users group for any FlexShares. What we do recommend, though, is that when you are going to set up a FlexShare, that you always set up a group. Now, you can have a group like we've got a company group. We set up a company group. We could assign the company group to whatever share that we had. And for some situations, that's going to be useful and simple. But for compliance type organizations and to meet best practices, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make a group that goes with the specific FlexShare. So let's say I want to make an accounting share so that I can put all of the people that have access to the accounting software or the accounting data can access that. So I know that I'm going to create a folder called accounting. And ClearOS will not let you create a group and a share with the same name. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a group called FS-accounting, meaning this is a group for the FlexShare accounting share. And I'm going to put in FlexShare accounting share group. Okay, so that's what this group is for. It's specifically for the FlexShare accounting, and I don't want to put test user in it. Okay, so I haven't added my accountants or my financial people. I haven't added them to the system yet, so I'm not going to put everybody in there. I'm just going to put the users who have rights to that share. Now I'm going to go back into my FlexShare, and I'm going to add the accounting share, and the status of the FlexShare is enabled. Now it's important to note that that doesn't mean that it's enabled for a protocol. It's just enabled as a FlexShare. This is the accounting share, and here in my groups I can see my FS-accounting. Now third-party access, app access, there are apps in the marketplace that may want to be able to access your data in your FlexShares. It's important to turn that on for those apps if you know those particular apps. One example would be the Plex Media Server. So if I was creating a videos folder, I might want to enable third-party access so the Plex Media Server can access the data that's in there. All right, I'm going to hit add here, and that's going to create our FlexShare. Now at this point, there's nothing shared. The Windows file share is disabled, the FTP share is disabled, and the web is disabled. Here I'm going to turn it on for the Windows file share. I'm going to set it to enabled, permissions read write, and here I've got two options. The recycling bin, I'm going to turn that on. What that means is that if somebody deletes a file on the map network drive, it will not remove it from the system. The typical behavior is it is gone, and it is gone forever. But we have this feature that allows you to actually put it into a hidden share that the WinAdmin can access, and from there you can recover data. Now that also has a downside to it, and that is that now it's collecting data that has been previously deleted. So as an administrator, if you do enable this, you're going to want to visit the system every so often and clean out that hidden .trash folder that exists under that FlexShare. All right, audit log. This is really important for compliance-based industry. This will tell you who changed what, when, and where. I'm going to hit an update. All right, so now we have that FlexShare is shared for the Windows file system. Now I'm going to hit return to summary because I want to show you something here as well. Here on the list of FlexShares, I can hit edit here or delete, but here I can see a folder that exists here. That's because this is being shared out with the file system through the Windows networking protocols. If I add other layers on here, it will add additional icons. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to change it so that this accounting share, maybe I've got an accountant that I hire to do my taxes every year, and I want to be able to share this with him. So I'm going to make him as a user on my system, and I'm going to give him read-write permissions to this particular share. And maybe his name is Jason. Thanks for doing our taxes. Okay, so if he notices that, he's going to see that little message I left for him. All right, update. So when he logs in, he's going to see that message. But now this is shared for FTP as well. And now this is going to give the address. Right now my external address is on the LAN. I'm doing testing. But if ClearOS was your gateway server and had a public address, it would show up here as this particular URL. And you can see that there. Let me go back. All right, same thing happens for the file share. You can see where we've got a UNC path for the actual server name plus the folder name, right? All right, and if I go back to summary now, you're going to see an icon for the FTP. Last, we've got another protocol that we can layer on to this, and that is HTTP and HTTPS. So say for instance, actually let's create a new share for this. I'm going to create a new group, of course, before I do that. System, accounts, groups, and this group is going to be called FS-product slicks. Okay, and I'm going to call this the FlexShare product slicks folder. All right, so say for instance, as part of my business, I create PDF documents that I want to be able to publish on the web. I want people to be able to see that. Here I've got my web server running. I'm going to hit configure default site here and put in www.example.com. And the group that I'm going to set up here is I'm going to set it up for the company. I've got disabled on all of that. Okay, that's fine. So now that the default website is set up, I'm going to set up a FlexShare that'll actually be a different subsite to what's going on here. I'm going to go back to FlexShares and layer on a new share called Product Slicks. I have that enabled. And of course, I'm going to set up my group. All right, so for this share, I want to turn on my Windows file share because I want my publishers who are making these PDF documents to be able to put data in there. But I also want it viewable on the web. So I'm going to set that to enabled. For the web users, I'm going to set that to read-only. It's going to be on read-only. I want to be able to do all here because I want people, to come in off of the internet and see these product slicks. This is marketing material that I don't care if anybody sees. So I'm going to turn off authentication, and I'm going to keep SSL on. Here you can use, if you have different certificates set up, you can use a different certificate. Say for instance you had a certificate for your domain, you could put that in. I'm going to show the index. All of this is fine. This is fine. I don't care about that. All right. So now what will happen is that this same data storage that I have for a map network drive for my users that are part of the Product Slicks group, they can publish data in there, and now this data will be viewable on the web. So that makes it really easy to do rapid publishing of documents. So this is one of the ways, these are some of the ways that you can use ClearOS as a very robust kind of NAS solution for your environment. And there will be other protocols coming in the future. Lastly, I wanted to talk about some of the add-on apps that you can get that will help your NAS deployment be really successful. And some of those have to do with like antivirus and anti-malware. So you can set it up so that ClearOS will actually perform file system checks against your against your server and look for anti-malware that is on your system. Now the anti-malware file scanner will use the open source tools to do your file scanner. But what happens here is that this is a pluggable architecture, and if you use like third-party virus scanners that cost money in the marketplace, it will layer those scans on top of it. So you get the open source scans, plus you get whatever scans that that third-party antivirus provider would be providing into your file system. So I'm going to say select for install there. Actually, I'm going to check the cloud really quick here too, because I want to get these anti-malware rules. Now here you can see I've got a price here of $126 over 3 years. This is a on versions of ClearOS Silver, Business Silver or higher, they come bundled with a lot of apps that are bundled in, like the anti-spam rules, content filter blacklist. Anti-malware rules is one of those. And here we layer on ClearCenter provided updates on top of the open source tools as well in order to provide antivirus for your file system. So these two things here, I'm going to put those on, and this is just one way that you can really add additional tools to protect your NAS server. Anyway, that's about it. Any questions?
Not today. Thank you, David. That was great. I appreciate you talking to us today about the ClearOS NAS Marketplace apps, which include directory app decisions, file sharing options and services, and utilities that make your NAS more secure and robust. Check back later for more content from ClearCenter and Hewlett Packard Enterprise.